How could a rusty pile of trash worth $1,100 ruin a proud CEO's big land plan? At 11:15 a.m. in gray Cleveland, Vanessa Knight laughed, selling a junk warehouse to Devin Cross, a black single dad in dirty clothes. She thought she was dumping a costly cleanup problem, but Devin took the insults to save his 6-year-old daughter. Now, a wild 90-day race begins. Faced with his daughter's chills, greedy scrap dealers, and pure tiredness, how will Devin bring these forgotten, legendary cars back to life? Snow fell hard over the empty lots on the edge of Cleveland, Ohio. Wind cut through the cracks in the old warehouse walls. Devin Cross stood in that cold wind, holding his daughter's small hand. Chloe was 6 years old. She wore a pink coat that was too thin for this weather. 2 years earlier, Devin had a good job and a warm apartment. He worked as a lead engineer at a car company downtown. He studied how wind moved around fast cars. Then one Tuesday morning, everything changed fast. His boss called a meeting at 9 sharp. 300 people lost their jobs that same hour. Devin walked out with a small box of desk items. He had no backup plan and no extra savings. Since then, it had just been him and Chloe facing each new day together. Devin watched 3 black Cadillacs roll to a stop in front of him. The doors opened at the same time. Vanessa Knight stepped out first in tall black heels that clicked on the frozen ground. Her coat looked like it cost more than Devin made in a whole year. 2 lawyers and an assistant followed her, holding folders and coffee cups. The smell of exhaust from the Cadillacs mixed with the cold, sharp winter air. Somewhere nearby, a chain-link fence rattled softly in the wind. Vanessa looked Devin up and down. She saw his stained work jacket. She saw the grease under his fingernails. She saw the rust bucket of a warehouse behind him, and she smiled a cold, thin smile. "Did you walk here?" she asked. "Or did you actually save up for bus fare?" Her assistant laughed behind her. One lawyer looked at his phone instead of Devin's face. Devin said nothing. He just held Chloe a little closer. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm and low. Vanessa grew up in a rich family outside Columbus. Her father ran a big real estate company. He taught her one simple rule as a child: winners move fast and losers make excuses. She built her whole life around that one rule. She never learned to slow down and look closely at people. To her, a man in dirty work clothes was already a loser. She did not see a tired father trying his best. She saw a problem that needed to disappear quickly. This way of thinking would soon cost her more than she knew. Vanessa's company, Knight Development Group, owned this land. The warehouse was a headache to her. Tearing it down would cost her company almost $14,000. She wanted it gone fast, off her books, out of her mind. So when her assistant told her a man wanted to buy the wreck, she jumped at the chance. She did not care who he was. She only saw a cheap way to dump her problem on someone else. $1,100, Vanessa said, holding out a paper. As is. No refunds. No complaints. You clean up whatever mess is inside. She tapped the paper with one sharp red fingernail. Sign here, and this eyesore is officially your problem, not mine. Devin looked down at Chloe. Her lips were turning a little blue from the cold. He looked back at the paper. His fingers were stiff and red from the cold air outside. He signed his name, slow and steady, ignoring the smirks around him. Smart move, Vanessa said, though her tone said the opposite. Some men know their place. She turned on her heel and walked back to her warm car. The engine started. The tires spun a little in the snow before finding grip. Within a minute, the Cadillacs were gone, leaving only tire tracks and cold silence behind. An old man across the street had watched the whole thing from his porch. He shook his head slowly and went back inside his house. He had seen rich people treat working folks that way before. It never got any easier to watch, no matter how many times he saw it. Devin stood there a moment longer, feeling the sting of her words more than the cold wind. But Devin Cross was not just a tired man with dirty hands. 2 years ago, he was a lead engineer at a car company, working on wind tunnels and vehicle shapes. He held a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Ohio State University. He graduated near the top of his class. Then the company cut hundreds of jobs in one single meeting, and Devin lost everything he had built. Since then, he fixed cars for cash and drove a tow truck at night. He never told strangers about his old job. Pride made him quiet about the past. He led Chloe inside the warehouse. The building stretched wide, maybe 1,000 square feet, filled with shadows and dust. Wind screamed through a hole in the roof. Devin wrapped an old wool blanket around Chloe's shoulders. "This is our new home for a while," he told her softly. "I promise, baby, it gets better from here." Chloe hugged him tight and whispered, "I'm not cold, Daddy." But her small body was shaking as she said it. That first night tested Devin in ways he never expected. The temperature outside dropped below zero. Inside, it was barely warmer. Chloe's fever crept up past 100 degrees by midnight. She coughed hard, her small chest rattling with each breath. Devin had exactly $45 left in his pocket. He warmed the last of their water on a small camp stove and wiped her forehead again and again. Doubt crawled into his mind like the cold crawled through the walls. Had he made a terrible mistake, dragging his daughter into this broken place? He thought about calling a shelter. He thought about giving up his pride and asking for help. He pictured Chloe sleeping on a cot in a crowded room full of strangers. He pictured himself failing her all over again, just like the layoff had failed them both. But something stopped him from picking up the phone. Some quiet voice told him to wait one more day. So he sat beside Chloe all night. He watched her chest rise and fall. He prayed the fever would break before morning. Around 5 in the morning, her breathing finally settled. Her fever dropped just enough. Devin closed his eyes for only a moment, exhausted beyond words, grateful beyond words too. At 5:30, that same morning, Devin was still shaking off sleep. He walked deeper into the warehouse to search for anything useful. In the farthest corner, hidden behind stacked pallets, he found a rusted roll-up door. A thick chain, an old padlock sealed it shut. Curious, he pried at the chain, with a crowbar he found nearby. Metal screamed against metal. The door finally gave way and crashed down with a heavy bang. Dust exploded into the air, and Devin coughed, waving a hand in front of his face. When the dust settled, Devin saw 4 shapes covered in torn, gray tarps. Mouse droppings covered the cloth. Spider webs stretched between the shapes like gray lace. His heart started pounding as he stepped closer. He grabbed the edge of the nearest tarp and pulled hard. 40 years of dust rained down around him. Underneath sat a Porsche 911. It was painted a fading shade of white. A faint green racing stripe ran along its side. Devin's trained mind kicked into gear fast. He knew the shape of the body, the curve of the hood, the classic wide fenders. This was not just an old car. This was a 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS, one of the rarest sports cars ever built. Collectors around the world would pay a fortune for a car like this. Devin's hands trembled as he touched the cold metal. He whispered to himself, "This changes everything." He pulled the other tarps back, one by one, his breath catching each time. Under the second tarp sat a 1968 Dodge Charger, its dark paint dulled by decades of dust. The long hood still held its powerful, sleek shape underneath the grime. Under the third, a 1957 Chevrolet Corvette, its curved body still graceful despite the dirt. Chrome bumpers peeked out from under a thick layer of gray dust. A fourth car sat further back, half hidden in shadow, waiting for its own turn to be uncovered. Devin pulled that last tarp too, slow and careful. Under it sat an old race car, stripped down and rusted through. It looked far too broken to save right now. Devin made a quiet promise to come back for it later. For now, the Porsche mattered most, because time was already running short. Devin stood among the cars, stunned. These machines were worth more money than he had ever imagined holding at once. He sat down on an overturned crate and put his head in his hands. Part of him wanted to laugh out loud. Part of him wanted to cry from pure relief. Just hours earlier, he had $45 and a sick child. Now 4 rare cars sat waiting in front of him. He knew rich collectors would fight over cars like these. He also knew none of it mattered if he moved too slowly. He knew he could not do this alone. He called his oldest friend, Gavin Reyes, a mechanic who also worked part-time for the city bus department. Devin paced by the front door, checking his phone every few minutes. Gavin arrived by early afternoon, his old truck rattling into the gravel lot. He stepped inside, saw the cars, and froze completely still for a long moment. "Devin," he said quietly, "do you have any idea what you're sitting on?" Devin nodded, still catching his breath from the discovery himself. Then Gavin's face turned serious, almost worried. He pulled Devin aside, away from Chloe, and lowered his voice. "There's something you need to know," he said. "This whole block is marked for new building plans. They're planning a new rapid bus line right through here." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The clearing notice goes out in exactly 90 days. After that, this land isn't really yours anymore, not the way you think." Gavin worked in a small office at City Hall. He filed papers about roads and bus routes every day. Most days, the job felt boring and small. But last week, he saw a map that made him sit up straight. A bold red line ran right past this exact warehouse. He knew the second he saw it that Devin needed to know. That is why he drove, over the moment his shift ended. Devin felt his stomach drop, but his mind moved fast, searching for a plan. 90 days. That was not much time, but it was something. If he could restore the Porsche and sell it, he would have real money in his hands. With that money, he could buy the 2 empty lots sitting right behind the warehouse. If the bus line truly ran through here, that land would become valuable overnight. It was a gamble, but it was the only path he could see forward. 2 days later, Devin went to see the city planning office himself. He wanted to check Gavin's information with his own eyes. A clerk showed him a public map pinned to the wall. The red line ran exactly where Gavin had said it would. Devin felt his hands go cold, and it was not from the weather. This was real. His whole plan now had a real chance of working. Gavin agreed to help for free, at least for now. "You get this place running," Gavin said, "and I want a piece of whatever business comes out of it." Devin shook his hand firmly. They had 60 days, they decided, to get the Porsche running and looking like new. The clock had already started ticking, and neither man wasted another moment standing still. Snow piled up along fences and rooftops all across the neighborhood that week. Word travels fast in a small factory area, even in the freezing cold. Devin needed a hydraulic engine hoist to safely lift the heavy motor. He did not have the cash to buy one outright. He walked to a nearby scrapyard. A wiry man named Marcus ran it. Marcus was famous for the gold tooth that flashed when he smiled. Marcus noticed the hunger and hurry in Devin's eyes. He guessed something valuable was hiding inside that old warehouse. $120 a week, Marcus said, grinning wide, showing that gold tooth. "Cash only, and you bring it back clean." The price felt like robbery, but Devin had few choices left. He almost agreed. Then he noticed 2 of Marcus's workers eyeing the warehouse behind him, whispering to each other. Something about their stares felt wrong, hungry, and dangerous. Devin thanked Marcus and walked away without renting the hoist at all. But Marcus was not a man who let a good guess go to waste. He had run this scrapyard for 20 years. He knew the smell of a big score when it walked past his gate. That night, he told 2 of his workers to keep watch. "Find out what that man is hiding," he said, "and find out fast." His workers nodded and slipped off into the dark streets nearby. Instead, Devin and Gavin built their own simple lifting frame from thick oak beams they salvaged nearby. It was rough, heavy, and slow, but it worked well enough to hold the weight of an engine. Still, at night, shadows moved near the warehouse fence. Marcus's men had started watching the place, circling like wolves who smelled something worth stealing. Devin started sleeping, with one eye open, listening for footsteps outside in the dark. He rigged a simple alarm using an old phone and a door sensor. If anyone opened the main gate at night, his phone would buzz loudly. He tested it twice, just to make sure it actually worked. Gavin thought he was being too careful, maybe even a little paranoid. But something in Devin's gut told him to trust his instincts here. That instinct would soon prove to be exactly right. The Porsche's flat 6-cylinder engine was completely frozen from decades of rust and neglect. There was no shortcut here, only patience and careful hands. Devin soaked each part in a mix of kerosene and acetone for 2 full days at a time. He tapped stuck pieces loose with a soft wooden mallet, careful not to crack the rare aluminum casing. Every motion had to be gentle and slow. One wrong move could ruin the very engine he needed to save. Gavin held a small flashlight steady, while Devin worked in tight spaces. Neither man spoke much during these long hours of quiet focus. The only sounds were tools clicking and metal slowly coming loose. Small wins mattered here, like a bolt finally turning after days of soaking. Each small win kept both men believing the engine could still be saved. Money grew tighter with every passing day. Chloe's food and small needs never stopped, even while the project demanded everything Devin had. He took a night job at the Cleveland docks. He unloaded cargo from 10 at night until 4 in the morning. It paid $80 a shift, just enough to keep them both fed. He slept only 2 hours most days, catching rest in short, broken pieces between work and repairs. His body started paying the price for this brutal pace. His hands shook slightly when he held tools for too long. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, red and heavy every single morning. Still, he pushed forward, driven by one single thought that never left his mind. He was not just fixing a car. He was fixing a future for his daughter, one exhausted hour at a time. Some nights, he caught his own reflection in the Porsche's clean window glass. He barely knew the tired face staring back at him. His eyes had dark circles under them. His cheeks looked thin from skipped meals. Still, every time he looked at Chloe sleeping nearby, something inside him held steady. He thought about the wind tunnel tests he used to run at his old job. Back then, he chased perfect numbers on a screen. Now he chased something much simpler and much more important. He chased a safe, warm life for his little girl. On the night of day 45, everything nearly fell apart at once. The Porsche's engine finally roared to life, after weeks of careful, painful work. Devin and Gavin cheered quietly, careful not to wake Chloe sleeping nearby. But that same night, Devin worked a shift at the docks. Danger crept toward the warehouse in the dark. One of Marcus's men crept close to the building, holding a bottle filled with gasoline. The man lit the bottle and threw it hard against the back wall of the warehouse. Flames burst upward instantly, licking hungrily at old wood and dry insulation. Inside, Chloe woke up coughing, smoke already filling the small space where she slept. A homemade alarm Devin had rigged, wired to his old phone, screamed through the night air. Devin was miles away at the docks when the alert reached him. He dropped everything and ran to his truck without a second thought. Snow blew sideways across the road as he drove faster than he had ever driven before. His heart pounded against his ribs the entire way home. When he arrived, orange flames were already climbing up the warehouse's back corner. Thick black smoke rolled out through the broken roof and into the freezing night sky above. Devin sprinted straight into the smoke, without hesitation, calling Chloe's name over and over. He found her curled in a corner, crying, scared, coughing hard from the smoke around her. He scooped her into his arms and ran back outside, into the clean, cold air. Once she was safe, wrapped tightly in a blanket, he turned back toward the fire one more time. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and charged back into the smoke and heat. He fought the flames until his arm burned from the heat pressing against his skin. When the fire finally died down, Devin looked at his right arm and saw the skin blistered and red. But behind him, through the smoke, the Porsche sat untouched, safe from the flames that almost destroyed everything. The pain was real, but so was the relief flooding through his chest. Neighbors from nearby buildings came out to watch the smoke and flashing lights. Firefighters checked the warehouse walls and told Devin the fire had not spread far. A young reporter from a local news station asked Devin a few quick questions. Devin just shook his head and asked her to leave him alone. He wanted to check on his daughter, not talk to a camera. The old man from across the street brought over a thermos of hot coffee. He handed it to Devin, without a single word, and walked back home. The next morning, Devin's arm throbbed under a thick layer of bandages Gavin had wrapped tightly. 60 days had already passed, and only 30 days remained before the city's deadline arrived. Devin refused to stop, even injured, even exhausted beyond what most people could imagine enduring. He learned to hold tools steady with his left hand, while Gavin supported the heavier work. Together, they pushed forward, through pain, fatigue, and fear of running out of time. Day by day, The Porsche came together piece by careful piece. They repainted the body in its original white, adding the faint green stripe along each side. By day 60, the car gleamed under the warehouse lights, looking almost brand new again. Devin stepped back and studied it. Something like peace settled over his tired shoulders. It was the first time in weeks he felt that way. This was no longer scrap metal. This was a legend, reborn from dust and rust. Devin reached out to a well-known collector named Richard Prescott, famous across Ohio for his passion for rare cars. Prescott arrived at the warehouse unsure, expecting a letdown behind such a rough, forgotten building. Instead, he found a perfect fix-up, every detail perfect, every bolt tightened, with clear care and pride. He listened to the engine roar to life, smooth and powerful, exactly as it should sound. Prescott's doubt melted into something close to wonder as he circled the car slowly. He crouched down and checked the tires with careful fingers. He opened the driver door and breathed in the smell of old leather. "Where did you learn to do work like this?" Prescott asked, looking straight at Devin. Devin told him about his old job building cars downtown. Prescott nodded slowly, clearly impressed by the story. "Most shops would have ruined a car this rare," Prescott said. "You saved it instead." Without much hesitation, Prescott pulled out his checkbook right there in the dusty warehouse. He wrote a check for $240,000, handing it to Devin with a firm, warm handshake. Devin stared at the number for a long moment, hardly able to believe what he was holding. His hand shook slightly as he folded the check and placed it in his pocket. This single check could change everything for him, and for Chloe, if he moved fast enough. Devin wasted no time turning that money into his next move. He used $55,000 to quietly buy the two empty lots sitting directly behind his warehouse. The previous owners, tired of paying taxes on useless land, sold quickly and without complaint. Devin signed the papers with steady hands, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in his chest. He was no longer just surviving. He was building something real. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa Knight sat comfortably in her polished office, confident and unaware of what was happening. She signed an order to clear Devin's property, expecting him to leave quietly and empty-handed. In her mind, the poor mechanic she had mocked months ago would simply disappear without a fight. She had no idea that the trap she built was about to close around her own company instead. 3 days before the deadline, the city made its announcement to the public. Cleveland officially confirmed the new rapid bus line, cutting directly through the land behind Devin's warehouse. Overnight, property values in that area jumped fast, and it caught Knight Development Group off guard. Vanessa's own company needed those exact 2 lots to build a required transit parking area. Without them, she faced steep contract fines and a possible loss of her building license. Vanessa arrived at the warehouse days later, with a team of nervous lawyers trailing behind her. This time, Devin met her calmly, standing tall, no longer dressed in stained work clothes. He held every legal document proving clear ownership of both lots behind the building. Vanessa's confident smile from months earlier was completely gone, replaced by tight, controlled frustration. Devin refused to sell the land outright, no matter how much pressure her lawyers applied. Instead, he offered a long-term lease at a price far higher than she wanted to pay. He also demanded fair payment for the warehouse itself, valued now at $420,000. Vanessa's team argued for hours, searching for any loophole to avoid paying the full amount. One lawyer tried to claim the original sale papers were unfair to Devin. He hoped that argument might cancel the whole deal somehow. Devin simply pulled out a copy of the signed contract. Vanessa's own signature sat right at the bottom of the page. The lawyer closed his folder and said nothing more after that. In the end, Vanessa had no real choice left but to sign. Exactly 3 months after that freezing day, when she mocked him outside, Vanessa signed the new agreement. Her pen moved slowly across the paper, each stroke costing her both money and pride. Devin watched quietly, feeling no anger, only a calm and steady sense of justice finally arriving. He thought of that first cold night, with Chloe shaking beside him, and felt tears sting his eyes. 3 months after signing that first $1,100 contract, Cleveland's biggest classic car show opened downtown. Devin's new company, Cross Apex Auto Works, held the best spot in the entire building. The restored Dodge Charger and Corvette gleamed proudly under bright event lighting, drawing crowds from every direction. Wealthy collectors surrounded Devin, eager to place orders for future restoration projects. Bright lights bounced off the polished paint of every car in the room. People walked slowly between rows of shining classics, snapping photos with their phones. Someone near the Corvette let out a low whistle of pure admiration. Another man asked Devin 3 separate times if the Charger was truly for sale. By the end of that single evening, Devin had collected orders worth $145,000. He wore a tailored navy suit, standing tall and confident beside his daughter Chloe. She wore a small white dress, looking every bit like a proud little princess beside her father. People who once ignored men like Devin now leaned in, eager just to shake his hand. Gavin stood a few steps away, grinning as he watched his friend work the room. Devin had kept his promise from that cold night in the warehouse. Gavin now owned a real share of Cross Apex Auto Works. He had quit his desk job at City Hall 2 weeks earlier. "I still can't believe we pulled this off," Gavin said, shaking his head. Devin put a hand on his shoulder and smiled. "We didn't pull it off," he said. "You believed in me when nobody else did." Gavin just laughed and told him to stop getting soft in front of the customers. Across the crowded room, Vanessa Knight arrived, hoping to network with wealthy investors attending the event. She froze completely when she spotted Devin standing proudly near his gleaming display of restored classic cars. The poor mechanic she had mocked months earlier now stood as a trusted business owner. Her mind struggled to match the man she remembered, with the success standing before her. Devin noticed her from across the room and walked toward her without fear or anger in his steps. He extended his hand, the one still marked faintly with scars from that terrible warehouse fire. Reporters and photographers nearby raised their cameras, sensing an interesting moment happening right in front of them. Vanessa paused, then slowly reached out and shook his offered hand. "Rust can be polished away, Ms. Knight," Devin said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "But a rusted character has no solvent strong enough to fix it." Vanessa's cheeks flushed deeply, and she looked down, unable to meet his steady gaze any longer. She stepped back, saying something quiet, before disappearing quickly into the crowd around them. Devin turned back to Chloe, scooping her up gently into his arms with a warm smile. She giggled, wrapping her small arms tightly around his neck, completely unaware of the history behind this moment. Her small hand patted his cheek gently, the same way she had done every night in the cold warehouse. Devin closed his eyes for a second and just held her close. Around them, flashbulbs continued popping, capturing images of a father and daughter walking toward brighter days ahead. Later that night, the crowds thinned. The lights dimmed low. Devin walked outside, with Chloe asleep against his shoulder. Snow drifted softly down again, just like it had on that very first freezing day months ago. But this time, the cold felt different, softer somehow, like winter itself had finally forgiven him. He looked up at the falling snow and allowed himself, finally, to smile without worry weighing down his heart. He thought back to that first night in the freezing warehouse, doubting every choice he had made. He thought of Marcus's men lurking in the shadows, and the fire that nearly took everything from him. He thought of his burned arm. He thought of sleepless nights. He thought of the fear that never fully left him during those 90 days. Every struggle had led him here, to this quiet, snowy night, standing taller than he ever imagined possible. Devin placed Chloe gently in the back seat of his newly repaired truck, buckling her in with careful hands. He remembered small mornings from those hard weeks, ones that still made him smile. Chloe used to sit on an old stool, swinging her legs while he worked. She would ask him questions about every tool on his bench. "What does this one do, Daddy?" she would ask, pointing at a wrench. He always answered her, even when he was tired beyond words. Those small moments kept him going, when everything else felt impossible. He climbed into the driver's seat and sat for a moment, watching snowflakes settle on the windshield. Somewhere behind him sat a warehouse that once smelled of rust and rejection. A new future had been built there. People had once looked at that broken building and seen nothing but garbage. He thought about what Vanessa's father had taught her long ago. Winners move fast, losers make excuses. Devin did not agree with that rule at all, now more than ever. Real winners took time to look closely at people and things. Real winners saw value that others rushed right past. Devin had looked closer, past the rust, past the dust, past the years of neglect and shame. He had seen value where others saw waste, and worth where others saw only trash to discard. That single choice, made in the freezing cold beside his shivering daughter, changed both their lives forever. Sometimes the most broken places hide the greatest treasures, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to look. As Devin drove away from the glowing lights of the car show, Cleveland's skyline stretched wide behind him. Somewhere out there, other people were being judged unfairly. They were judged too fast by those who never looked past the surface. Devin made a quiet promise to himself that night, driving slowly through the falling snow. He would never let anyone misjudge another person's worth again, not while he had breath and voice to speak up. His story would not end with bitterness toward Vanessa or anyone else who doubted him along the way. Instead, it would prove something else. Patience and quiet strength could outlast any amount of pride or cruelty. Devin Cross had walked into that warehouse as a man with nothing but $45 and pure determination. He walked out 3 months later as living proof that true worth can never truly be erased, no matter how deep the rust runs. In the months that followed, Cross Apex Auto Works kept growing steadily. Devin hired 2 more workers from his old neighborhood. Both men had struggled to find steady jobs, just like he once had. He taught them everything he knew about engines and patience. He also set aside part of every big sale for a small community fund. That fund helped other families get through hard winters the way nobody had helped him. Chloe often visited the warehouse after school, watching her father work with pride. She liked to say her daddy fixed broken things and made them shine again. She was not just talking about the cars. Some evenings, Devin stood outside the warehouse and looked up at the sky. The building no longer looked broken or forgotten to him. Bright new lights lit up the front sign now. The old rust had been scraped away and painted over with care. He remembered the cold morning when Vanessa called it a pile of trash. He knew now that she had been wrong about more than just the cars.